Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly, copium capital of the world of Warcraft. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catch me live whenever I'm streaming. The holidays are over, Time Walking marches on, in a different form at least, and starting this coming Tuesday at 10 AM Pacific, Plunderstorm returns to ruin your life for a few weeks. Also when it starts, a Twitch drop will be available, and I will be here for it all, farming plunder with the rest y'all, finding the best and most efficient method to plunder and die over and over again. The most important detail to point out is the Plunder Store, which is replacing the Renown track, allowing folks to target and purchase only the things that they want, from ensembles to pets, including what's available from Plunderstorm Season 1. So follow me over on Twitch for the drop, for some company, or, some encouraging words after dying a few dozen times. And I'm going to be cheering you on too, don't worry. For now though, eyes are on patch 11.1, Undermine, Season 2. How's it looking in this first public build? What's feeling good or bad or disorienting maybe? These are early impressions, but in a good way. Undermine is a different vibe from what we've seen in World of Warcraft, I think, but it's not mind-blowing. It's not revolutionary, if I'm using that as like a unit of measurement. It's like a quarter step above evolutionary. No spoilers, but I'm going to give you the bones of how it feels to be introduced into Undermine, the patch, and the new zone. It starts by introducing us to a new punched out chunk of the Ringing Deeps, and here's where we get the basics of what's going on. Not so much of a spoiler, but Gallywix is back, he's up to no good, and we gotta work our way towards stopping him. Once we get to know our new goblin allies in this part of the Ringing Deeps, it's time to really visit Undermine via rocket-powered drill. The questing vibe I got here felt refreshing. It reminds me of when we were first introduced to Argus back in Legion, minus the 3-month grind before the raid finally opens up. What we get in our journey to Undermine is a bit slower of an intro, and what we enter is an atmosphere that feels different for World of Warcraft, but not if you've played other kinds of games. The adventure in Undermine starts at the main station. We learn we're only visiting the downtown part of Undermine, and this playable section is only a part of Goblin territory. Apparently where all the good food is, I guess. And as we progress, we're likely to get access to other Goblin territories throughout Azeroth through this station. And as I started exploring Undermine, which included getting a ride around town, I had a mix of reactions that, yeah, I'm still playing World of Warcraft, but it's like my WoW character was transported into, I don't know, like a mini version of Grand Theft Auto or other similar games with, this city exploration kind of vibe. Area-wise, Undermine isn't a huge zone. In fact, I measured it. It's as big as Suramar City, but with a level of detail dripping with personality where Suramar's buildings, they were cool, but they were mostly facades. For example, take this building. It's one of the first that you'll see coming out of the zone. No clue what sorts of questing will happen here, if any, but while the main functionality of this landmark will be the teleporter over there that takes us back and forth to Dornogal, thank goodness, but let's take a look inside. Here we see a fully furnished floor, populated by NPCs walking around, doing their thing, and that's just the first floor. We climb up to the second floor, and we climb up to the third floor, and even the fourth floor, and finally outside overlooking the city. A pretty big percentage of buildings around here are not just facades, they're just as filled out. It won't surprise me one bit if a lot of what we see here will be later reused for player housing. So far I've seen cherry, banana, and pineapple themed wallpaper, and I am team pineapple 100%. But anyway, with all these buildings in close proximity, we get blocks, we get alleys, and tight spaces. And I have to admit, it's going to feel maybe a little bit disorienting to some people due to their character size. Not everyone plays a goblin, let alone an elf, a Kultiran, or a Tauren. Spaces are going to feel a little bit cramped or maybe uncomfortable. That might be okay, or it's a bit of that awkwardness that reminds us of the uniqueness of the race that we chose. Undermine, at least to me so far, is like the coolest and most character-driven zone I've seen in World of Warcraft. We won't be able to fly here, and there's no sign it'll ever be an unlock. And it's going to feel bad for those folks who just can't stand not having that freedom. And I'm not entirely decided either. I always appreciate the ground game, and I haven't lived the day-to-day experience in the Undermine yet, but Undermine isn't Argus or Korthia either. We'll see how things go in a few weeks when I can better describe the Undermine routine and how travel plays into it. That said, we've got to talk about the drive system to help us get around Undermine a bit faster, but also it adds a little bit of familiar gameplay. Early on, we get our own ride. Think of it as a vehicle, not a mount, to get us where we're going, but it's a bit more like Mario Kart, only you're in a really densely populated area and not a racetrack. We shouldn't expect to slam the gas 100% of the time either. Sometimes tapping to go around a corner is the right play, and the controls will take some getting used to. It's great when you're on the roads, but if you're driving off the streets and into alleyways, well, you're better off on your ground mount. In fact, you can just navigate on your ground mount too and totally ignore driving. I imagine a lot of players will do just that, just like how some people prefer steady flight over skywriting. There's some additional gameplay attached to the drive system. There are ground races to complete, and while driving you can radio in and start up some small drive-based quests that have you zip from one location to the next, transporting cargo, or dropping by to lay down some street justice. Again, it's a very similar vibe to GTA-like games. These activities give rewards, but it feels supplemental so far. It doesn't appear we're expected to drive and have to do all this city stuff, otherwise we can't get into groups for keys. There's still a lot to reiterate with Drive though, from the camera angles, those are kind of funny, and how well it handles water traps and handling. Parts can be found or built, and the car can be customized to suit your driving style. Honestly, I'm good with the lower top speed and high grip handling, which will already put me at 700% run speed, as opposed to the up to 1100% run speed, and even faster if I pop a boost. And not to say there won't be lots to explore too. Undermine's many buildings and even sewers mean lots of nooks and crannies and prizes to be discovered. I found a few small hints to suggest how to maybe obtain some of those turtleshell back pieces we found on data mining, with some very obvious tie-ins, and it should be fun figuring this out. So don't be fooled by the area size of Undermine or the lack of flying. This zone is very, very packed. While the testing of raids and dungeons are ongoing, I decided to dive into delves to get some questions answered with the tanking version of Brann, something lots of players have been asking for since before the launch of War Within. I featured some live coverage in another video, a link to that is in the video description, and I'll summarize here. First, the testing conditions, they're just not great at the moment. Character data isn't being transferred correctly, the item level scaling for testing is based on Season 1 and not Season 2, and there's no vendor for me to try out all the new curios. But that said, the tank spec for Brann, that's functional, so let's talk about it. Frankly, it works. Brann's got lots of abilities to pull threat and taunt for good measure. Even when I'm spec'd for a tank, Brann can easily pull off me. As expected, he can take a beating. He has abilities to absorb damage done to you and mitigate spellcast to a certain extent, but as announced, he's most effective with a healer keeping him up. Tank Brann is sturdy, but he can't do actual healing on himself, and he has abilities that increase in potency when he receives effective healing. So how does Tank Brann do when trying to progress into higher tier delves? The impression I have, again, limited testing, is what many, including myself, had predicted. Pure DPS classes are going to see diminishing returns from Tank Brann and higher tiers of difficulty. Hybrids who can off-heal will go a bit further. Monk, Druid, and Paladin tanks can go even further thanks to their higher external healing, but it's going to be healer specs who will use Tank Brann in the highest level delves, provided they also have the gear and curios, the brand levels, and so on and so forth. Odds are good we're going to see a couple of edge cases, at least at the start of the season, where a geared hybrid class, maybe using a healing spec circlet or something, can start clearing 11s straight away. And it'll be in Blizzard's best interest to minimize that as much as possible to make it fair for most everyone, but not overbalance where everyone's having a bad time. I couldn't find them all yet, but a few delves seem to have new storylines with respect to the ongoing story, and the new delves they seem pretty fun so far. Side Street Sluice meets the vibe of Undermine with tight spaces and corners, along with some verticality with amazingly no evade bugging so far. Meanwhile, Excavation Site 9 is a much more open area for big and equally messy fights. It almost just feels like a two-person dungeon. As for how crests work, the rewards don't seem to work entirely right at the moment. I did manage to clear a tier 11 delve, but I only received 2 rune crests, and I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to get more. Once the testing conditions are better, I should be able to clear 11s with lives remaining with some PTR gear, but I have a good feeling the way it works is we'll get 5 runed and 6 gilded for completing delves at their toughest difficulty with lives remaining. I still haven't seen any indication one way or another if there's going to be a catch-up for these delve-specific gilded, and I hope we find that out soon, because that's going to do a lot for our plans on how we earn the best gear. I only touched on some of the high-level points so far. There's a lot more in-depth stuff to check out, like how the renown and the questing flow is going to work, like what's a week in Undermine going to feel like on top of everything else there is to do in Khazalgar. And there's still many unanswered questions like the Gilded Crest and also professions. Gathering is a thing in Undermine, though I fail to see when I'd prefer to be here as opposed to anywhere else where I could fly. I haven't seen how to do respecs for professions. We also haven't seen any recipes beyond the barest minimum, as in, we've seen a new contract and Vantis runes for the raid, an engineering recipe for drive upgrades, but that's just about it. And as for how I feel about all of this so far I like what I'm seeing. As the 0.1 patch, if I were to compare Undermine to the likes of Dragonflight's Zerolite Cavern or Shadowlands Korthia, and BFA, which didn't have a new zone in the 0.1 patch, Undermine feels like the kind of zone you don't want to just quest in and knock out chores, but to actually hang out or even live in, but not really. It's a pretty janky looking place. I don't want every WoW zone to look and feel like this, but I'm already looking forward to the next time they want to make a densely populated capital, and we may be getting something in Midnight. Imagine having a neighborhood full of player houses with their own customized themes. Undermine gives a taste of what's possible, and yeah, this is going to be a long wait, a long year, and that's the show. I want to give it up to the folks watching live. Y'all have been great company as always. To our excellent patrons, thanks for the continued support. And how about you, viewer? You made it to the end, you fed the algorithm, and I'm extremely grateful. I hope you'll join me next week for the drops and the vibes, and stay tuned as we uncover more of what's coming next in the world of Warcraft and, the usual day-to-day. Please like the video, subscribe for more coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.